You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith. Johnson.
Maria Menounos and Bing.com present live from the Kari Feinstein Oscar Style Lounge at the world-famous Mondrian Hotel on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, California. And streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AfterBuzz TV's Movie Edition. Tonight's AfterBuzz movie is The Artist. We'll break down everything from the making of The Artist to behind the scenes and everything in between. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite movie. It's AfterBuzz TV's The Artist.
It's like
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another AfterBuzz TV podcast. We're coming to you live from the Kari Feinstein Oscar Style Lounge Gift Suites at the Mondrian Hotel here on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, California. We are here on the weekend before the 2012 Academy Awards. And over the next 2 days, we'll be podcasting live about the movies. We'll have stars, directors, producers, anybody coming by. We'll have them come over, give us their take and their thoughts and their reactions to the movies. Until then, I'm your host, John Comerford. I'm joined on the panel by three lovely and talented young ladies. We have Tamara Berg, we have Bethany Jaber, and we have Catherine Tulich. So, ladies, very exciting to be here. We never know what's going to happen. This is happening live. And as people come in, it'll be exciting to hear what they have to say about the Oscars. Are you happy to be here? We're happy to have you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Now, have you mentioned what film that we're covering?
Well, we will be covering The Artist, and then we'll have 10 movies that we'll be speaking of over the next 2 days. We're going to start with The Artist. Your initial impressions of The Artist. We'll go ahead and get right into that first.
Yeah.
Well, I think, quite a few months ago, the buzz was building
Yes.
on this movie. I mean, silent film, black and white, but everyone was talking about it. There was such an incredible buzz way back. Obviously it started in Cannes, but this film was came out of nowhere, and suddenly it was like the film everyone was talking about.
This was the lightning in the bottle that all the producers want. They want something that's just really going to capture everybody's imagination, take them for the ride, and enjoy the season, because this is really what the Oscars are about. The Weinsteins picked it up, distributed it in November, really making their push for it, and doing a fabulous marketing job, by the way.
But I love the Weinstein Company.
Yes,
I mean,
it's terrific.
It's so nice for someone to just make films that people love. I mean, you don't know whether or not they're going to be a box office sensation.
Yes.
But in trusting that people like good films,
and like this film, for example, quite a risk for them in certain ways. I mean, it's so unusual, it's so different from everything else, and they really didn't know that it was going to be a huge success. I mean, you really never know, but it was a huge risk with this film. Don't you agree?
I do, and I feel like this year, especially with the Oscars, it's a lot of our producers. What they've made is love letters to the craft that they love so much, with Hugo and with The Artist.
And even with Woody Allen making it was a love letter to Paris, but it's still a love letter. So clearly.
And I think also what's great about The Artist, it's kind of the antithesis of a lot what Hollywood has become to many people.
Right.
The big effects, the
3D,
the popcorn movies,
CGI.
And this is going back to the basics of how filmmaking began and how everything developed. And I think that's what's really, so nice, especially people that have never ever had the chance to see black and white films or silent films, to be able to see how incredible these films can really be.
And if anybody who doesn't know, who's been living under a rock, The Artist is essentially a love story. It's the black and white film. It's the silent film, and it's about a fading silent film star whose career is eclipsed by the woman he loves, just as talkies are taking over Hollywood. It's been a critical darling, as we've discussed. It's won the BAFTA.
10 nominations
10
for
nominations
Oscars.
for Oscars. Won the BAFTA. Michelle Hazanavicius. He won the DGA Award for Best Director. So that's the setting. But before we get into the actual movie, let's discuss how it became a movie. So Bethany, if you would.
It's like having a baby. Because
But a lot more people are involved.
A lot more people are involved.
With no crying, because there's no sound.
And sometimes it takes longer than 9 months.
I know.
that's true.
It took 35 days to shoot. But the inception, the beginning of the idea began 8 years ago. And so it does, that incubation period in his mind.
Wow, that is a long gestation.
Yes. And so it was really, as I was listening to various podcasts and different interviews with Michel, it was fascinating that he said, I don't know how to do a comedy because it usually they take 25 minutes. You know, how do I do a full length in this? And he found in his research that over time the melodramas and the romance really kind of stood the test of time in silent films. And so he thought, I have to make this very simple and keep it simple to kind of move the story along. And I love that, you know, his mind came up with this in a nonlinear form. He's like, I know who I want to work with. I could do a spy version of this, like a la Fritz Lang.
Right.
And the last two of Michel's movies were spy movies.
And very, very well received.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, but he kind of just said, no, I'm going to try romance. I'm going to go for this. And in the course of 8 years, developed this masterpiece,
which came into what we know as The Artist.
Which, you know, I love. I don't know if any of you have read The Tipping Point, but they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert.
Proficient, yeah.
Yeah, and so I believe that this film definitely has acquired its 10,000 hours.
Probably that and some.
Yeah, but
And
eventually
more so.
it went to Cannes, and it was very
Huge
successful,
the
as you know.
applause at the end was supposedly like between 10 and 20 minutes long. I mean, I don't know how unusual that is, but it's unusual for any movie here.
I think it is. I don't know. Have you ever experienced that in
No,
an audience?
never. Nothing like that.
No.
I think they were thrown by that.
Yeah.
So.
And then, of course, the Weinstein Company picked it up.
Yeah.
And
they didn't even, when they were making it, they didn't even know if it was going to have American distribution.
Yeah.
They were filming in America and didn't even know if American audiences would see it.
Well, and in fact, when Hazanavicius came up with the idea and was pitching it to people, he conceived that it should be shot in America.
Right, in LA,
but didn't
in
know
Hollywood.
necessarily that would happen because depending on the budget that they had, depending on the way things go, he considered, if somebody had said to me, I'm going to shoot it in Brussels, I will shoot it in Brussels.
Yeah.
So thank goodness that came through, because the real sense and the gravitas and the beauty of Hollywood is...
And I was just going to say,
visible.
and I think the interesting thing is, out of I think all the Oscar films, this was the only one that was actually shot on a Hollywood
I know
sound
exactly.
studio.
Something.
I know. Even Hugo was,
Yeah.
that was shot in the UK.
And the other thing that's interesting, the French guy comes to America to shoot our film. Our American guy goes to France
I know.
to shoot about Paris.
I know. And I think he
That's crazy.
employed a lot of SAG actors.
Yes.
So in terms of
Yeah.
just for Hollywood, this has been incredible.
And,
this
and
film.
the scuttlebutt, as it was being filmed, people were starting to get out. The word was getting out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, they're shooting a film in Hollywood.
Hollywood.
And it's a
God,
black and
it's a
white.
job.
It's a silent. It's about Hollywood.
it's not a SAG low-budget feature. What's
Yeah, exactly. Everybody wanted to do it.
Shot in my backyard.
All right, so that's how it kind of came into being. But let's now talk about the cast. How did he go about putting his cast together?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Normally with films, everyone wants the big box office star.
Right.
And for France, this is a big box office star.
Yes.
But for the rest of the world, Jean Dujardin is unknown until this movie.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. I mean, it's a little bit like, Australian actors,
Yes,
like Hugh
exactly.
Jackman and all that, huge in their own country, but it just takes that one breakthrough film here to really make them stars. So Michel has a Vinicius. I know.
Yeah, Hazanavicius.
I tried it. He had a long relationship with Jean Dujardin. They had made films before, huge box office hits with these spy spoofs, where basically Jean played like an Austin Powers, like Pink Panther, Clouseau character, OSS 117, and they were huge hits. But prior to that, he was really well known in France as a comedian. He worked in sketch comedy. He was famous for characters. He had a one-man show where he developed 11 different characters. He won talent contests on French television.
Wow.
He had sitcoms. So this guy was...
Very good pedigree then. He's
Very
got
good
he's got
pedigree.
Well, and
chops.
one of the things that Hazanavicius loved about him was that he has this gorgeous face that is incredibly expressive, probably coming out of a comedy, but he can also, pull off the small moves that are necessary for interpretation on film.
I know,
And
and
he was
actually
very
Jean
comfortable,
said once that he was told he would never really be a good film actor because he was
It's
too
too big.
expressive.
Animated.
Exactly, yeah.
But he's
And he was
perfect for
able
this.
to also use his body, which, you need that for the long shots and be so expressive that way because you've got nothing but your body and your face.
Yeah,
I
but
have
I mean,
it.
he's English.
Especially
When he was first doing
Yes.
interviews, he's been on a crash course learning English because you know, when he was doing interviews here in LA back in October, he had an interpreter with him the whole time because he actually could barely speak a word of English, which kind of helps when you're doing a movie that's silent.
Right.
So, I was trying to figure out, was he saying French words and, you know, when he was mouthing them?
I have to say, I didn't know anything about him. I remember when I saw the movie, I didn't pay attention to the credits or something because I didn't know he was French.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything. So at the end of the movie, when he has the one line, I went, "Whoa, what?" I didn't.
It is. It's jarring,
I did not
isn't
know.
it?
Yeah.
So it threw me because I wasn't paying attention until then.
Yeah,
I thought
exactly.
that was fascinating.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, he's just perfect for this role. He studied a lot of old great silent stars like Douglas Fairbanks. So he really got into the role by, you know, really looking at old silent stars. But I think it's also important to mention that Michelle didn't want them to really overact in this film because the style of acting from the silent era to now has changed so much that if they really did over-the-top acting, it would have looked really strange to a modern audience.
Right. But what I loved is that they hinted at it, that stylized, overworked.
Yeah.
They just touched on it, but pulled it way back so that we wouldn't go, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
So I really I was. The other thing that I thought was fascinating about the research, Jean usually finds his way into an actor by voice. He finds the voice first, and he couldn't this time because there's no voice.
Yeah.
So he had to find other ways to find the character.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating.
And he said, especially because his character takes such a slide from being this positive, confident, movie star to really hitting the depths. And he said he was really worried about playing those sadder parts, but he said he realized the benefit of being a silent movie is that you didn't have to rely on dialogue, that you could just think an expression and it would come across.
Yeah.
So I think that's the beauty of his performance in this movie, that it does take such, and why he's winning so many acting awards is because he does take such a journey in this role. And then, of course, we have the leading lady, which happens to be the director's leading lady.
What?
Yes, indeed.
You're
Shock
oh
horror.
my God! AfterBuzz exclusive. Are you kidding me?
So I'm not sure how she got the job. But Berenice Bejo she is extraordinary as Peppy, enchanting as Peppy Miller.
Enchanting.
And too many superlatives.
Yes, there are too many.
And the director Michel actually said he really wrote this role with her in mind. But initially, it was only meant to be a small role. He said he was coming home at night telling her, I've got this little role in this film. The dog's got a bigger role, but I really would like you to be in the movie. And then, of course, Peppy's role just became more and more and more. So, and I mean, she's just wonderful in this. I mean, her background is that she's actually Argentinian. Her father was a director in Argentina, but was suppressed from directing. So he basically escaped to France when she was 3 years old. But she grew up as a huge movie buff. So she said her favourite actors were Robert Mitchum and Marilyn Monroe. So at 10 years old, she's referencing these actors. So she loved Singing in the Rain. So she was just really perfect to step into a role like this.
Did she have? I didn't read anything. Do you know if she had any prior roles? I didn't.
Oh yes, she came to Hollywood to make a film with Heath Ledger, A Knight's Tale,
wow. Okay.
and she had a small role in that.
Oh, okay.
So actually, her English was not bad because she lived here for a little while while she was making that movie. But no, she's had quite a few roles in films. But again, they were nothing huge. This is really a breakout role for her. So that's why having the director as your hubby kind of helps.
Yeah.
It does help, but I also think what helps is knowing who you are as an actress. And and I'm making an assumption here, but you can spend a lot of time auditioning in Hollywood, but if you find projects that really sing to you, and you follow your heart, things like this happen. So in very many ways, she has followed her heart.
Oh, for sure.
Well, it was terrific casting, and it was perfect for her. She had a great look. You could easily transport her to another time.
That was one of the great things about both of them, is that they had looks that did not look irrevocably modern. That some people do. I mean, they absolutely were believable in these roles.
Kudos to makeup and costuming for all the help and the hair and all that stuff, but they had great looks to begin with.
Well, and they worked together before. I don't know if you had known that.
The
two leads worked together before.
No. Oh yes, they were in the OSS 117.
I thought you meant like together.
So actually, the three
worked together.
So actually, Michelle, Berenice, and Jean were quite a team coming into this because they'd worked on two big hit spy films in France. So they knew each other really well. Yeah, so that helped. But she said that one of the things she had to develop, which I thought was interesting, is that she had to play an American actress in her film,
Yes.
so she sort of had to think about being bigger.
Exactly.
Because she said Americans kind of have this confidence and more swagger about them. So she said she had to think of Pepe as an American, not as a French actress.
The French are much more.
The French are much more, you know. Yeah.
Everybody does that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, you had mentioned about Jean having to not overact and just to let it, just have one reaction, expression, have that, the camera pick it up. One of the things, of course, that really helped in that was the music, because the music helps let us, it gives us cues as to the emotion that's being played. Right. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about the sound on it and the music that was used on it, because as a silent film, obviously, music plays, I think, an even bigger role, because that's the only
audio clue that we get.
So tell us a little about that.
Hasan Avushi said that from the beginning of his career, he fantasized about making a silent film. And people didn't take him seriously, but obviously he was dead serious. But one of there's so many amazing quotes and so much focus, obviously, on the sound and lack of sound for this film. He said, as a director, a silent film makes you face your responsibilities. Everything is in the image and the organization of the signals you're sending to the audience. So clearly the acting and the portrayal was so important because of that issue. He played music during... So when you're making a traditional film, you obviously have to pay attention to that. It's all about quiet on the set. And a couple of things happened because that wasn't a requirement here. First of all, the dog, Uggy, who we will talk about eventually. Well, you know, the maxim in Hollywood, never work with kids or animals, right? Because they always steal the show. And some credence can be made for that, for Uggy stealing the show. But one of the challenges with it is that dogs bark, right? But it didn't.
You have to command them with hand signals.
And that wasn't an issue here. And it really freed them up in a lot of ways to be more expressive, to get to do what they wanted to do. And then Hasan Avushi played music while they were doing the scenes.
And it was the type of music that would help them figure out what kind of tone he was going for in that scene.
Exactly.
And they could be not afraid to be a bit bigger because the music was there,
Absolutely. And he said it made our lives easier because it allowed us to overplay with the voice and not be embarrassed. And it carried wonderfully. So it was sort of like they lost their self-consciousness about the sound and the
music, which is what music does anyway. It goes beyond the conscious into the sub and all that other stuff. So.
And Berenice Bejo said, certain pieces of music will carry you away immediately, and if you listen to them just before an emotional scene, and he always knew what music to play. When she talked about when she was getting off the bus and arriving at the audition on her first big scene, she says, the music gave me wings. And isn't that just an incredible, image for...
as an actor, wouldn't you love to have somebody fill you with that motivation before you go in?
Absolutely.
How great is that? And the other thing I found interesting, none of the music that was composed for the movie could be made until it was all shot and edited. So all that music he had to figure all that music out ahead of time.
Absolutely.
And then after the movie's made, then they got to go compose everything.
That's what film scorers do, and it's so amazing for them to be able to have all of the inspiration of the songs. Actually, a lot of the songs came out of the 40s and 50s, not of the time that the film is set in, but clearly the songs were inspired by that time. So there's a lot of wonderful inspiration there. One of the things I do want to say about the music was there was a bit of a scandal.
Yes,
did you guys hear about this? There was a scandal in that there was the scene where George is considering suicide. They used music that was composed for another film. And it's absolutely legitimate. It was licensed. They have permission. There's no scandal in that. But the music was from the film Vertigo, and it was from a love scene.
Amazing music.
Incredibly evocative piece and clearly so beautiful. But Kim Novak, who starred in Vertigo, had a really big objection to that and took out a full-page ad in Variety and said that she felt that it was completely inappropriate. Those aren't really the words she used, but I'm not going to use the words she used. But she felt it was completely inappropriate to use this evocative love scene music for a suicide scene. So I just wanted to bring that up because it was a huge controversy, and I think it was really interesting. You seem like you have some thoughts about that. I'd love to hear what you think.
I was just saying,
you're aware of it?
Oh,
what was Michelle's response?
It's Bernard Herrmann, which was the composer.
Right.
He composed a lot of Hitchcock's movies.
Beautiful music.
Amazing composer.
Well, and I do have...
What's his response?
As Nuvius' statement, he said, the artist was made as a love letter to cinema and grew out of my and all my cast and crew's admiration and respect for movies throughout history. It was inspired by the work of Hitchcock, Lang, Ford, Lubitsch, Murnau, and Wilder. I love Bernard Herrmann, the composer of that piece, and his music. And his music has been used in different films, and I'm very pleased to have it in mind. I respect Kim Novak greatly, and I'm sorry to hear that she disagrees. So that scene, with the music from Vertigo, was actually the temporary track, with the intention of a piece being written specifically for the film by the composer, and then they decided that the Vertigo piece, the Berman piece, worked better and kept it. So
I actually appreciate that. I actually appreciate that they acknowledge that it's a beautiful piece of music, and instead of trying to replicate something similar to it, they just let it exist.
And I also think it's interesting that I don't have any problem with it being used in a love scene or the scene it was used in, because it shows the versatility and it reaches in a different way and a different level. So I just disagree with that. I think it's okay to use music intended for one purpose and use it for another.
Yeah, well, and it's done all the time. Yeah. And I really agree and concur with what you say about that. It really speaks to the versatility of the piece. And by the way, Ludwig Göransson, the composer, is nominated for an Academy Award for this film. So
exactly.
There you go. All right, so that's the audio portion. Now we're talking about the visual portions and the way they came in. We all know it was black and white. And most of us know it was actually shot on color film and then transferred to black and white. Something about the black and white that he could get now didn't get the gray, and it was too fine. It was too crisp an image. So it didn't evoke a feeling of yesteryear, so to speak. So he filmed it on color film, transferred to black and white, had better grays, more grain in the thing, a little fuzzier. So that allowed it to speak to more of a mood, and a film that was made in 80 years ago or so. So I thought that was interesting.
I had no idea.
You didn't know that?
No.
Well, and also
fascinating.
Do you have the info about the speed?
Yes, it was also shot at 22 frames a second rather than the traditional 24 frames a second. So that when you played it back, you would have that slightly quicker feeling, kind of like old movies have a slightly quicker pace to them, or sometimes not in editing, but in terms of moving.
And James Cromwell, who played Clifton, the butler, spoke about how that affected the fact that it was shot in the different frame speed, changed how he acted, because there is a difference in the comprehension of the audience and in the comprehension just through the camera. So you have to adjust a little bit, and it's so tiny, but it's clearly very important.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've just noted that it was also projected in a 4:3 format, or I should say aspect ratio, so that it had that same feeling as they did.
Because that was what the films of the time were projected
and
in.
And the cinematographer loved that. He said it created so many more opportunities for him for angles and things like that, and to put things in the frame.
Yeah, he talked about the diagonals a lot.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
You just touched upon something really interesting, that your eye takes a while to adjust to it. And what I loved, one of the things that Michel did at the top of this is he opened with an audience. And so it allowed you to
be the audience.
Participate and adjust with the audience and kind of watch both sides of things. And sometimes, I mean, in a variation of films, in different periods and different genres and different styles, it always takes like 5 or 10 minutes for your eye to adjust.
Yes, and so you settle in, so to speak.
Yeah, but with this film, it took maybe 5 minutes. Like, at least for me personally, I don't know about you guys, but I was immersed in it pretty quickly.
Oh, I still watch old movies.
Yeah, so do I. So I'm kind of used to that framing.
So I'm used to the format. I'm used to the speed. I was thrilled.
Yeah,
I was
me
like,
too.
I'm right there.
I love seeing movies like that. But that's the experience of seeing old movies projected on a screen, because so many people's references is now television.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what was so great, is that, if you'd never experienced this kind of framing before, I mean, this is what old movies were projected in.
Right. Yeah. And the things that we're talking about is everything has to be in the frame. You don't have any audio to help you in terms of dialogue. Yeah. So everything you see is in the frame. And that creates a whole different thing for a challenge and exciting challenge for cinematographers. But the thing I wanted to talk about most was their use of black and white and grays, and how they had to tell the story without that. And then when you see it, because I saw the scenes before they're transferred, I'd seen some of the. I could not believe the colors that they were filming that eventually ended up black and white. I don't know how they had to figure that out ahead of time.
I don't know.
Oh, great. Seems like, it looks like we've just been informed that we have a sponsor joining us.
We have
so
a guest
we'd like to bring
joining us
somebody
up on
on here if we would. Until that time, and next we're going to have another. We'll come on in.
It's live.
Wow.
It's live.
It's
it's
like my
live.
favorite thing, food.
We have to share a mic.
Hey.
Okay, we're going to share a mic, no problem. And
This is Andrea.
I recognize Pampered Chef items in your
from
hands. I'm
Pampered
a
Chef
big fan of
joining us.
Pampered Chef.
thank you, Andrea, for joining us. You're
Hi.
here at the Kari Feinstein Oscar Gift Suite Lounge, and you've got Pampered Chef.
Yes,
so
we're
tell
really
us about
excited
it.
to be
You're
here.
excited? Great.
We're sharing everything new for summer, all of our hottest new products for barbecuing and entertaining outside.
Oh, excellent.
For the coming months. So we have a new line of barbecue sauces.
Tasty.
Really tasty from our test kitchens.
Which
Cherry
one's your favorite?
Chipotle
Cherry
barbecue.
Chipotle.
Cherry Chipotle.
Oh my.
Very nice.
That
And
sounds
what little
incredible.
gadget do you have there?
This is an herb infuser, and for summer what you can do is fill it with any fruits or herbs and use it to make flavored waters. So cucumber water,
Oh, so
lavender
it's sort of like a
water.
tea infuser,
Right.
but it's for
But
that's
for herbs.
that's
For fruit
fantastic.
herbs
Could
and
you also
silicone.
use it for tea to make
Yes.
iced tea?
You could use it in an iced tea pitcher. You could use it for soups, like in the fall and winter.
I need
to
one of
flavor
those.
your soups.
I'm just saying.
She needs one of those.
Yeah, that would be great because I love to put like cucumbers and
Exactly,
different mints.
lemon and lemon peel and things. Yeah,
It's
that's
really
so
good.
neat.
Then you don't have to dig it
Raspberry
out of your
water
drink.
and-
Right,
Sorry,
exactly.
Speaking practically
Yeah, you're
as
such
a
a
guy.
man.
It's true.
Such a dude.
Sorry about that.
And then
What else we got?
we
What do
also
we
have
have
a new line of barbecue tools, everything for the barbecue. So I brought over a few of our smaller ones, our smaller hand tools, but we also have a new
Nice.
pizza pan.
Looks like they're ergonomically shaped and
Yes.
designed.
Is
Not
the
gonna
pizza
scratch
pan also
anything.
designed for the barbecue, or is it
For the barbecue.
It is.
A
Oh wow,
pizza pan,
fantastic.
so you can make barbecue pizzas and get the nice grill marks on the bottom. We also
Wow.
have a new flexible turning baskets for harder to grill foods like fish fillets, corn on the cob, that you can just flip it all at once very easily and not lose your food in the grill.
Are you
So.
finding people are barbecuing different things now? Is that why it's not just meat on the barbecue? anymore,
Right,
is
lots
it?
of vegetables. We have a
Right.
new tool to barbecue baked potatoes, stuffed peppers. So just
You are all
people
about
have
the
more
summer
variety.
tools.
We are.
Excellent. That's fantastic.
And it does. It feels like summer here right now. I
It
think
does.
It's 80 degrees outside in Los Angeles. So
Great. Well-
we might have to check this out.
The gifts look terrific. I'd love to try the Chipotle cherry barbecue seasoning. We want to thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
by.
having
Thanks
us.
for
Tell us
being
what you
here. Have
This is
fun
Andrea
today.
from the Pampered Chef. Thank you so much.
Yay! We love the Pampered Chef. Thanks for stopping by.
So, as we were discussing, the thing I wanted to talk about next was the vernacular, the grammar they were using, the silent film grammar, and how we were talking about everything in the frame. They used everything they could. A lot of reflections, a lot of the tucks in the window of the pawn shop, the mirror, the dressing table. So as much as they could, they would put as much visual information as they could. Remember in the background when she's in the dressing room and he's standing there. If you look at the poster on the wall, it's one of his marquee posters, and it says "Thief of Her Hearts," things like that. When he's leaving the auction and he's sold all his goods, he's outside, and the marquee is Lonely Star. So we see all that kind of thing. So they use those kinds of things. They use the spinning calendar, the newspaper, all that stuff
The
that
sort of
really spoke the
shows time.
language of silent film,
And I don't know-
time passage.
And I love one of the time passages, which I don't know if you're going to mention this, but taken straight out from Citizen Kane, where
Yeah.
basically the marriage is dissolving, and you see these kind of like passages of reading papers
Yes.
and all that. It's almost like the great way they show time passed
Right.
in cinema prior to this is
For me,
fantastic.
the visual aspect is really, you could really see it, Evan, in especially one scene. This is the scene just after George decides to leave Kinegraph Studios, and I'm going to make a film on my own. He's on his way out. He's going down the stairs, and who does he bump into? But
Peppy.
Peppy.
She's on her way up. He's on his way down.
I
He's
know,
all
love
in
that.
gray and old.
Yeah.
She's all in white and fresh and clean,
Yeah.
which is what they're looking for. She's all excited and happy, and he's kind of resigned. And it's all visually there, and it's shot beautifully in the
Bradbury building.
Yeah.
Just so gorgeous.
Perfect choice of location, wonderfully composed, the music, everything, all the metaphors there, and that's it. That's a silent film. You know everything from the movie.
Yeah.
You get it right there. You know what's going on in the story, and everything you need is in that scene.
Yeah.
So that's how you tell it without saying a word. So it's just
Well,
beautifully
another
done.
really beautiful scene that I liked that is a similarly layered is the one that's in the restaurant where she's giving the radio interview the day before
Yes.
both of their films
Yeah.
come out.
Filmed in
So
Cicada.
that's shot in Cicada, which is a restaurant downtown as well. Beautiful, beautiful restaurant with this amazing. Have you been into Cicada? It's got an amazing gold-leafed ceiling. And you actually really didn't even get the splendor of it from the film because I think they were more focused on the action of it. But it's an incredibly beautiful restaurant, and there is this scene where Pepe is talking on the radio, and talking, and there's George sitting right behind her, sort of getting all of the barbs that she's unintentionally throwing. And the separation happens between the two of them. It's shot in this iconic building, and I just thought it was really amazing. And
There's a ton of beautiful things. When he's watching his movies at the end, and he's just seeing this life pass before him, and he gets up, and there's a silhouette of him in the screen. So it's a shadow of his former self. I mean, it's just so many metaphors that are going on. When he goes into Pepe's place and he finds out that she's purchased all his goods, and they're all shrouded in white sheets, ghosts from his past, and he can't handle it. All these things, and all with black, white, and gray. That's it. I just thought it was fascinating. So
No,
did you find that to be the case?
I find myself speechless at a lot of it.
Well, that's perfect. It's a sign of the movie.
But it is. It's a sign of the film. The moment that really speaks true for me is when he sets everything on fire.
Right.
And he's like ripping through all of that film and pulling it, and there's just a mass of it everywhere. And he lights the match, and it goes ablaze.
And what's the one film he saves?
I know.
The one film he saves.
That's what it is.
The only one where he's in a scene with her.
With Pepe.
Yeah, and just a little aside, I mean, one of the sad things about silent film, I think 90-something% of silent movies that were made in Hollywood have been lost because they basically did melt them down for the content and that. So I thought that was almost kind of sad that he didn't realize the value in that scene. He just kind of was so emotional and he just burnt all that work, saving one thing. And how much of great silent films we have lost because they didn't realize the value of it then. It was a temporary thing for them and they just got rid of them.
One other thing I wanted to discuss, and again, this is kind of all the departments coming to head. Just in terms of the arc of our lead character, we start him off, as you mentioned, in a big theater on the big screen. That's where we meet him. He's this dashing, swashbuckling guy. You see him backstage. He's in his tux. Bigger than life. Then he goes out on stage. He's entertaining everybody, even to the expense of his leading lady. So he's not the narcissist that he is. He's getting all the applause himself. But he's in full tux. Hair looks beautiful. And as the movie progresses and he starts getting lower and lower, he gets smaller. His clothes get a little bigger. They get a little grayer. His hair is rumpled. The tux is lost. He pawns it. And by the end of the movie, he's back on stage, full splendor. The tux is back. The hair is beautiful. Only this time, he's sharing the stage with his leading lady. So you got to see a full arc, just in color and wardrobe and music and the whole thing.
So
wonderful way to show the art.
So. Speaking back to costumes, I had seen a piece of, I think, like you said, we've seen some of it in color in interviews and in videos and things like that. And there's a scene where Pepe is wearing a dress that is, it's all sequined, and it's got sort of a diagonal, like a diamond pattern on it. Incredibly beautiful. And in color, that dress is all black. You can't see any of the detail. But when they switch it over to black and white, you can see all of the designs in it, and it's so beautiful. It's the grays. It's speaking again to the grays. There's a lot of interesting information, if I may just hijack the conversation a little bit, about costumes. Hollywood has a lot of really incredible costume houses. I've been lucky enough to go to Western Costume and see the collections that they have there. But one of the things that I found really fascinating about this was there were, because it's a vintage film, there were new costumes made, there were vintage costumes that were acquired, and then there were pieces that were sort of refreshed out of vintage pieces. And so they ended up having milliners recreate hats, reblock things, reweave fabric, refresh things to make them wearable and usable. And it's absolutely, pardon the pun, seamless in the film that there's nothing that looks modern by any stretch. But everyone looks absolutely gorgeous. It doesn't look like they're wearing weird vintage clothes, you know?
I agree. I think the only thing that's modern in the film is the end credits. No, quite seriously. They blend.
They're preparing you for going out into the world.
They fade in and fade out, and I don't believe that started happening until the 1940s.
No,
but besides that, everything is true to period.
If they didn't actually capture the way films are made, they certainly hinted at everything.
Yeah.
The scenes are a little bit longer. There's not really any quick cutting. You know, they let the emotion just hang. You just had to go with it, and the pacing, the whole thing.
Can we talk about John Goodman for a second? I don't mean to digress back to acting, but I didn't realize what a big celebrity he is in France.
I still don't. You're telling me something new.
They love the Coen brothers. They love John Goodman. And I grew up watching Roseanne, so my perspective was rather skewed, I suppose. And I do think he's a wonderful artist, but I guess in France he's.
And what do you attribute that to, do you think? I mean, is it that he's such a larger-than-life character? Is it that he's funny?
I don't know. I guess it's their love for, or the French people's love for the Coen brothers movies, and his charisma, his charm, his stillness. They were saying when he was preparing for this, he went into character a few minutes before the take, like a good 3 minutes, and he'd kind of gruff and huff and do the executive thing.
And he's not like that in real life. So some of his co-stars early on didn't realize he was getting into character beforehand and thought, wow,
that's
great.
I
think it's interesting that the two leads are unknown here, but a lot of the supporting actors and in very minute scenes. I mean, let's not
Malcolm
forget,
McDowell.
Malcolm McDowell heard about the movie, called the director up and said, I want to be in it.
Right.
And he said, well, I've only got like a part that's an extra.
Exactly.
Pretty much an extra. I'll take it.
He goes, do it.
Ed Lauder, who's been in, I don't know, a zillion things.
That's what I love, to see all these smaller roles by American actors that we all know.
Yeah, it was great. I was going, hey, that's Ed Lauder. I know. I just love that.
And I mean, one of my favorite roles is James Cromwell.
Oh, gosh.
And he's just one of these actors that he's always been there. I love him. He takes risks. I mean, he did a movie like Babe, which probably no one ever thought would be a huge hit about a pig. And it was a massive hit. And the same with this. He's smart. He kind of can see.
Oh, yeah.
He's obviously
and didn't
see.
he... Tell me if you read about this. I read that he interviewed Michelle in order to get the job instead of the other way around. Did you read that?
Yeah, I did.
Wasn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Just to sort of make sure he knew what he was doing.
John Goodman took all 3 minutes. I'm in.
On it. Yeah.
And he had an hour and a half.
I know. I think he wanted to watch
Jamie Cromwell grilling him on what about
storyboards. And interesting, what I didn't know too is James Cromwell has an amazing Hollywood history.
He does.
His grandparents, his parents. And actually, his mother, I think, was the leading lady for Cecil B. DeMille.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, his father was a director in the 30s.
Yes.
So he is just steeped in this beautiful Hollywood history.
Well, and I loved one of his quotes. He said, my goal was to not be in a silent film, meaning, he's an older guy. And,
Exactly.
I understand that.
Great tongue-in-cheek and great, charisma of James Cromwell. He's amazing. He's an amazing guy.
And then maybe just a little bit about some of the other actors.
Sure, go ahead.
Penelope Ann Miller.
Oh, yeah. She's
It's
good to see her.
It's great to see her. I mean, she was in movies like Carlito's Way with Al Pacino.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess she was
even
kind
the
of...
freshman. She was terrific in the freshman.
Oh, she was fantastic in that movie.
But I love the way she said, I got offered this film. Okay, I thought I'd do it. I don't think she had any comprehension of what it would become.
I love she's just always drawing circles around her husband's eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great.
But she did play a silent star before in Chaplin, opposite Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, of course,
which is one of the reasons Michelle actually wanted her in the film. And I mean, she plays the wife, and she has to have a lot of emotion in this film, and I think she does a beautiful job.
Everybody was talking about that one scene where she decides, right before she goes up the stairs, I think that's where she makes her decision.
Yeah.
That's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
Nobody was expecting that, and everybody on the set just went, oh, we better start acting good.
Yeah.
Acting well, whatever.
Exactly.
So apparently she did a really amazing job there.
Yeah.
I'm curious how they found the dog.
Okay,
Let's talk about the dog.
Let's talk about
I think
Uggy.
I need to know.
Forget about
I love
Jean
And exactly.
Forget about
The
Jean
big
and
star.
Bernice.
Peppy.
The breakout big star
That's
is
right.
Uggy. Who isn't talking about Uggy? I mean, it's unbelievable. And he's already won a couple of awards. The Palm
Yes.
Dog.
I
The
really
Palm
enjoyed
Dog.
it.
As he
and the
should.
Golden Collar.
Yeah.
And
And
apparently...
Blackie from Hugo is pissed.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
Blackie's snubbed.
I don't know if this was true, but there was even talk recently that there was kind of, this campaign to maybe get him an Oscar, and the fact is that Animals, since apparently Rin Tin Tin got so many votes once for being Best Actor that the Academy, I'm not sure if this is true, said
no, we're
they
not
have
doing
to have
that.
2 legs, not 4.
okay.
But Uggy really is a rags to riches bone to, story. I mean, this was a dog that was basically dumped by 2 owners because he was hyperactive. He was considered not a good companion dog. He was about to go to the dog pound, and this trainer basically adopted Uggy. And he realized his potential because he said that he was so energetic but also unafraid. And the fact is, if you're going to be an acting dog, you have to not be afraid of everything going on, the lights and the camera and everything.
Right.
So he was perfect, but he really had to do the hard road up to stardom. I mean, he was in traveling shows. Apparently one of his great tricks
We
was
should
being
do
on
the
a
story of
skateboard.
Uggy.
Yeah, you can skate.
Yeah,
It'd be Uggy the artist.
I know.
And you see him go on interviews. He's been on lots of interviews with Jean Dujardin, Dujardin rather, and he's such a charming little puppy. It's not just on film.
If you're the actor, I forget his name. I'm sorry, Serkis, the guy, the gentleman who did all the work in Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
Peter is the name. Was his first
Andy
name?
Serkis. Yeah.
Andy, thank you.
Andy Serkis. Yeah.
He's a human playing an animal, and he gets nothing. This guy's dog. Everybody's calling. He thinks he's charming.
I know.
This poor guy is sweating like crazy in a gorilla suit. He gets nothing.
Well, but Uggy's done other roles too. I mean, he was also in Water for Elephants.
Water for Elephants, yeah. His first film role was Mr. Fix-It. He did a lot of commercials. He's traveled a lot. He went to South Africa to do a commercial. He did this touring show in Venezuela and Mexico.
Isn't that something?
This is a seasoned dog actor.
Yes,
and in
indeed.
fact, he's turning 10 or he's just turned 10. And, he's just hit the big time. And his trainer's already saying that this probably will be his last film.
No.
I don't know. Let's hope we at least see Uggy again. But
Uggy.
he's now a mature dog. He can't. He probably doesn't have the energy
Are
and
they putting him out
ability.
to stud or what? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Let's hope.
I know.
Right, so
So
go ahead.
sorry. But I do hope that his previous owners recognize him.
Yeah.
Because it's
I
it's
know.
a total Cinderella
Yeah,
story.
it is.
Like,
know.
oops, I had a gem the whole time. I never knew.
Exactly. Oops.
So now, what do we think? Now, if, for instance, the artist, it's such a huge phenomenon right now. Obviously, a critical darling, and for many reasons, and all of them I think are valid. But you have to wonder: is it because Hollywood is, we're so used to the regular, same old stuff, and now this is just different because we haven't seen it so long? Is that one of the novelty aspects of it?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah.
I
Can't help it. You can't
Well,
really
I think,
escape.
like you saying, John, both of us we know old movies.
Yeah.
We love old movies, but
Yeah.
there's just this generation that's never had this experience
Right.
before, and I think
that's part of the huge novelty.
I think
I
it
also,
is.
but how do you think it would compare if it was actually made in 1930? How would it stack up to other movies of the
Well,
time?
I think we should also mention the fact.
Oh, hey!
I mean, the guest joining
We have
us.
another person joining us here.
Microphone here?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're
gonna share.
We're gonna share this one.
All right.
So, please introduce yourself.
My name is Craig Arthur von Schroeder. I'm a former attorney turned designer, quasi-tailor, and stylist.
And you're here at the Kari Feinstein Oscar Gift Suite Lounge.
I'm here to help bring back some style to Hollywood for the men.
And you're wearing some right now, I would say.
Classic styling, yes. Yeah, it's all made in America. It's all about the fit for guys. And we're working with a lot of talent on red carpet for the Oscars, different events, and stuff like that. So
You all do custom pieces, right?
Custom, yes, yeah. Made
I've
from
seen your
scratch.
things before.
Yeah,
They're really
thank you.
beautiful. Really
Thank you.
beautiful.
We probably can't see the detail here, but this
Yes,
is
very nice.
beautiful,
What do we call this fabric? What is this, Tammy?
This is
Gabardine?
it's a wool herringbone.
Wool herringbone. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Nice.
we're just trying to bring some of that classic kind of handsomeness back to Hollywood.
Well,
which
it's
I
sort
think
of a-
needs
artist
and
did.
about
I
the
was
fit.
just going to say it's a sort of a perfect year for that because we've
Yeah.
got these films that are really highlighting classic good looks, like The Artist, which is the film that we're talking about.
Which I haven't seen,
You haven't
but
seen it.
everyone,
You
everyone
must
says
see
I
it
have
for
to
the
see it.
fashion,
Yeah.
my friend.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You must. I think
Yeah.
you would really appreciate it because they've got they're Oscar nominated for
And
Boardwalk costumes.
Boardwalk Empire
There you
TV
go,
show, and Mad Men, all those things. All these things, guys are seeing men in power wearing, custom suiting,
and
then the popular
classic-
culture is grabbing onto it. You see Banana Republic with the Mad Men collection, and
Yes.
all these,
I really want hats to come back. Is it ever going to happen?
What to come back?
hats are difficult because is it difficult to fit a hat on a person?
Yes.
Kind of like glasses are difficult to fit on a person. It really takes a qualified fitter. I guess what do they call
Milliners.
Milliners. Yeah, you know. There's not a lot of qualified milliners out there. So.
No, well, I feel like at this point in fashion, a fitted suit is just magical, but when we add a hat, it becomes a costume.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think less is more generally, and I think guys should put on clothing that complements them. They shouldn't put on clothing to get noticed. And a lot of times hats are to get noticed.
I do miss them.
Or
though.
to hide
That's
a bald
good
head.
point. I think that's a good point.
Where can we find you?
You can find me on the internet, CommonwealthProper.com. You can email me, call me. I'm in LA, New York. I'm on the sartorial jet set. Catch me if you can.
And I've seen your line.
There
It's
you
really
go.
beautiful. Thanks for
Thanks
joining
for coming
us.
by. Well, that's good. It's good to see the classic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice
the classic
style
suit
there.
coming
Classic
back.
styles
Yeah,
coming back.
excellent.
We like that.
If anybody knows me, they know I'm into classic style.
Everybody
Well,
knows
it's
that
the
about
old style,
John.
everything coming back,
Yeah.
Everything old is new again,
exactly.
as they say.
So,
Yeah.
And so we were just talking about how would it stack up with
Oh, yes.
movies
Yeah.
of the time?
Well, I think one thing we should. I mean, as much as we love the film, it is the storyline is something that has been told many times in
sure.
Hollywood.
Classic
It's a classic
storyline.
storyline about the big star that falls and
It's,
the new
Star is Born.
Yeah, Star
We've
is
seen it a
Born,
bit,
which was
yeah.
made 3 times.
Right.
Obviously
Now 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Singing in the Rain, which is an obviously huge reference for this film. But you know what I did like about this, and what I found, just a theme that I liked, which I think is for any time, whether it's the 20s, 30s, or the 2012s, the fact that something new comes in, and then someone is always pushed to the side. That
Right.
the older is not appreciated anymore. The new and the fresh is the thing that's coming along, and
Right.
suddenly, and this happens in many industries. As journalists, I have that experience being from a print background, and then
Sure.
suddenly
That's right.
it's the internet, and suddenly you're going,
boy.
oh my God, I'm not worthwhile anymore. But it's something that's a theme that as technology and new things happen. I think this is a theme that resonates in any industry.
Well, you see it in Hugo too. There's George Méliès. I mean, in his being pushed to the side. You even saw it in Moneyball. This phenom pushed to the side.
Yeah.
And the new, so it's in a lot of resonating themes there about being pushed to the side. So we see it a lot.
Yeah.
But it's nice to
Exactly.
see that they're honoring the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one more thing that I wanted to talk about the production. I know this is going back a little bit, but it was really interesting as they were talking about, as the word was getting out about this film being made, this black and white silent film, a lot of the trades on the lot were starting to get excited about it and thinking, oh my gosh, it's sort of an opportunity for me to really stretch and revisit the older sort of concepts. Hasanavishu says everyone got excited. I think people appreciated the fact that this was a movie about their profession. People from the camera department offered to make special lenses. Old projectors were pulled out of closets. It was very special. So it was just, I know, it really kind of tugs at your heartstrings.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. I mean, legitimately.
Are you tearing up?
A little bit.
Okay. So should we talk about nominations?
We should.
I
10
think
nominations.
we should.
10 nominations.
Including Best Picture.
Yeah.
I think it's going to win a slew of them. It's one.
Well, I think for all those reasons too, you've got to remember who the voting people are in the Academy. They are movie people. They are the technical people. They are the people that are like going, singing, great, real movie making is back, in terms of the old-fashioned way.
And it's interesting that it's up. Hugo's got 11 awards, and Hugo is on the cutting edge of of the new technology, and here it is. There's a throwback to the old technology, and they're vying for,
for a lot of the same awards in the same categories.
I find that fascinating.
But so many of the members, are either people that have, had a lot of experience in the past, or they come from generations. Probably their grandfather worked in silent films.
What's the average age of the Academy is 64.
64 years old.
Yeah.
And 94% of them are male.
That's true.
So
94%?
Yeah.
No, I take it back. 77% are male.
Oh my goodness.
94% are white.
94% are white.
Yeah.
It's a big article in the LA Times last weekend about the demographic of the Academy.
Yeah, I know. You got to get in there.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah, seriously. They need you.
I know. Female.
And me. And you, but not you.
So does anybody want to offer their thoughts on who's going what it'll take?
I'm sorry.
I don't think it's going to take any sound.
I think it's going to sweep. I think it'll do.
Do you?
I think best film without a doubt. I know it's a toss-up between George Clooney and Jean for Best Actor, but I have a feeling Jean's going to pull this one out.
I do too.
I really think he's going to win this, and I think Michelle will probably get Best Director as well.
Yeah, even over
Martin Scorsese.
For Hugo.
I think he will. I just have a feeling this is personally, I think this is going to be a sweep. Yeah.
Okay,
really
wow.
It's funny. I'm torn between what I want and what I think will happen. But it always works out that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
It's pretty exciting.
Well, we just got our cue.
Yeah.
It's
time to go.
We just go talking for days and days.
We
We've got to say
We
our
could talk
goodbyes.
for another hour about the artist.
We could go ahead and say goodbye.
For everyone.
So we want to thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
And nothing. That's it.
Oh, I just want to say thank you for joining us at the Kari Feinstein Oscar Gift Suite Lounge, and we'll see you next time. We're out.
Go see The Artist if you haven't.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria
went fast.
I
thought for an hour it was gonna-
and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff. We would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.